Great. Thank you, everybody. Delighted to be here and speak to you on continuing on these ideas, social context, and particularly looking here, what I was asked to talk about is the effects of marketing and media on young adult health. So what am I going to talk about is, first of all, to quickly define types of marketing and media. We've touched upon this over the last day and morning, but to give you a little bit more detail on that, and then discuss young adults' exposure to media and marketing, and then to look at the relationship between the marketing and young adults' health risk, and touch upon health promoting behaviors as well, and then to discuss some policy implications and next steps. So what are some of the types of media and marketing that we're talking about? Well, first of all, there's direct marketing, old media, new media, and promotional materials that I'll define in a second. But this is media or marketing that's directly to you. It's very obvious that you're being marketed to for a particular product that may influence you to use the product or to change your behavior in some way. But there's also indirect marketing, which would be something like product placement. If you're seeing a movie and suddenly you see a Diet Coke bottle or a Kleenex box, something like that, that's more product placement. It's more indirect. They're selling it to you, but it's not so much a direct advertisement. I'm going to mostly talk about the direct today. So old media that we've talked about, it's funny to call it this, but this is how the area, I'm getting old because to me, this is still what I use. But looking at television, radio, and yes, there's still print media out there. But certainly the new media is what we've been talking about more, which is internet, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and Pinterest. Why this new media has been particularly important when you're talking about marketing is it has a greater reach and a greater relevance to young people and young adults. It's instant, it's in their pockets, it's on their iPhones, and they're sharing it, and we're going to talk about in a second. There's also greater opportunity to interact with this marketing and to interact with consumers. So it's very easy for somebody to share it, to change it, and more importantly, to have it be very much in real time. So you'll see something happen in the news, and suddenly somebody will be sending it off by Twitter or some other ways, or some new marketing comes on, and it'll be just distributed very quickly in real time. The other area that we haven't really talked about very much, but with marketing, is also free samples. And you see this a lot with college students, where they're offered something free. I got in the mail a coupon for buying a pack of cigarettes for free, or a buy one, get one free idea. And they were sending it to the wrong person. Or they'll get low prices or sales, and again, you'll see that promotional materials go to college students. And then both adolescents and young adults, you'll often see wearing a hat or a t-shirt or other materials advertising media, but also advertising cigarettes or tobacco or alcohol or some other product. And that also, again, filters forward of they're wearing it and they're promoting it to other people, and it becomes more socially acceptable that way. In terms of adolescents and young adults' exposure to media, this is just a comparison between 2000 and 2010. Adolescents and young adults, and unfortunately these, and you're going to see this throughout this talk, and everybody else has said it too, most of the data are on either a large age range, 12 to 24, they don't break out young adults, or young adults are not part of it at all, but at least we've got a little bit of data here. So we're seeing that in the year 2000, about 74% of these adolescents, young adults listen to radio, and that went down to 41%. And you can see the rest of the numbers there, and certainly the use of internet increased from 16 to 42%. The money spent on marketing, I think, is very important, and we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but approximately $13 billion has been spent on tobacco ads and promotional materials. Similar to the ones that we were talking about a few minutes ago. $5 billion spent on alcohol ads, and about $4 billion on prescription drugs. So a lot of money is spent on advertising. This is not broken down by young adults, but overall, and certainly young adults are seeing these ads, as we know. So what are some of the effects on this marketing? And what we see is, and actually this is an area where we do have some data on its effects on young adults. And this Fisher et al. Article that came out in 2011 does a fantastic job of providing pages of information on various studies that looks at direct marketing and media and ads on health risk behaviors. And what they're showing and what other studies have shown is that the effects of marketing really do shape young adults' perceptions of risks and benefits. So by seeing these ads, by seeing somebody look sexy, by seeing somebody smoking and look cool, by seeing somebody drinking and hopping in a car and doing well, they're really saying, oh, it's not so risky, and you know what, it's cool and it's beneficial. And so there's a lot of data, and this is both cross-sectional and longitudinal data. We also see that it increases the beliefs in the acceptability of the product. So, we're bombarded with, we as healthcare providers or health educators or parents or teachers talk to young people and young adults about the risks of some of these behaviors, but then they're, of course, seeing the counter argument in the media, and it increases their perceptions of how good that product is. And then there's also some relationships shown both cross-sectionally and longitudinally on young adults who are exposed to this media and the marketing, that they are more likely to initiate a behavior as well as to continue engaging in a behavior that they've already been doing. I will note, or let me just say one, sorry, we are seeing these effects on behaviors such as drinking, sexual behavior, risky driving, and smoking. The same problem with the literature, though, is, again, we're seeing even in the young adult literature, they're grouping between 16 and 24. We don't have a lot of data specifically that's targeting the young adult area, but at least there is some data. The other thing is that there are some racial ethnic differences here where we know that young adults and adolescents who are from African American or Latino populations are more likely to be marketed to. You'll see it in hip hop, you'll see it in music, where some of the ads for drinking or for tobacco can be more targeted to certain racial ethnic groups, and that there is a relationship, again, to that marketing and their use of the product. You see this a lot with menthol cigarettes, that it's targeted to an African American population, and they are more likely to use menthol cigarettes. For the purposes of today, in going a little further to give you some examples, I'm going to focus on smoking, because that is actually an area where we see a fair amount of the research on the effects of marketing and on some ideas of counter marketing. But first, I want to talk about young adults peer-to-peer reciprocal marketing. As I was saying, the thing with marketing is, especially if you're talking about new media, somebody can have it on their iPhone or their Facebook page or whatever, and then distribute it out pretty widely. And so young people and young adults can become the marketers themselves, either on purpose or just by having some promotional materials on their website or their Facebook page. So we see that 85% of young adults put images of substances or sexual behavior on their publicly visible social marketing sites. It may be an ad, or it may be they themselves or their peer groups using these substances, but it becomes a marketing tool as it gets shot out to other people. Certainly the advantage of this to young people is that it increases the peer acceptance and the interest in whatever behavior they have advertised on their Facebook page, for example. But we also know, and no matter how many times we tell young adults this, and certainly adolescents, it can still have some negative consequences by having scenes of them having sex or drinking a particular product or smoking or drunk driving or whatever they're doing. It certainly can increase the risk of cyberbullying, but also harm their reputation, and certainly has an influence on both their career and education opportunities. More and more jobs, more and more colleges are now looking at Facebook pages before they've decided whether or not they want to accept you into their university or into their employment. The other thing that we see is that the industries, tobacco, alcohol, sexual behavior, porn industries certainly are doing their own marketing research, and they're a lot better at it than we are. And they are about 20 to 30 years ahead of our social scientists in trying to look at health promotion and reducing risk behavior. They are really good at studies. And by the way, I just want to point out, I only have one paper cited here from Pam Ling and Stan Glantz, but their group and others have a lot of papers and more recent. I just didn't put them all on here, but for those of you who are interested in really looking at the role of the industries in the marketing. So we know that they're looking at young adults' attitudes, their social groups, the values that young adults have, the aspirations and their role models. And they're very, very good at using this information to develop the marketing strategies that are most relevant to young adults. So let's talk about some examples. I'm going to wake you guys up here and give you some good pictures. So one is, these are some pictures, or excuse me, some memos that were found from the tobacco industry that really show what a good job they're doing in trying to understand young adults. So here's one from 1972. The anti-smoking attitudes they, meaning young adults, have learned in school and elsewhere can be unlearned or replaced by pro-smoking norms held by others their own age or a little older. Here's another one. A young adult, this is great, absolutely summarizes our last 2 days. A young adult is leaving childhood on his way to adulthood. He is leaving the security and regimen of high school and his home. He is taking a new job. He is going to college. He is enlisting in the military. He is out on his own with less support from his friends and family. These situations will be true for all generations of younger adults as they go through a period of transition from one world to another. And then another one from 1985 from Philip Morris really looked at trying to increase the social acceptability of their product. And then again, to use that information to create marketing and ads that are most appealing to young adults. So they write, tell me it is all right for a person like me to smoke. Tell me I am not personally offensive or unlovable because I smoke. Tell me I am not a social outcast because I smoke. Tell me smoking is not the most crucial choice in my life. Tell me I am not different from everyone else just because I smoke, and give me positive role models. Absolutely parallels what we know about young adult development and their identity development, where we're going through. It's an absolute perfect mirror of what young adults want to know. So some examples of what's going on in the marketing, bar and club promotions. Here's an example of both direct and indirect marketing, that they'll have promotions and advertisements, and again, often free cigarettes or free alcohol, and often alcohol with cigarettes, that are promoted to young adults in clubs. And actually, if you go to clubs, sometimes the industries will have plants there. They'll actually have people from their organizations and from their companies giving free marketing, giving freebies to young adults, and hoping that they'll use them and get addicted to it at that moment. So there's a lot of marketing going on directly in the places where young adults are visiting. And here's another one, cool places to party, and telling people to come on over to the bars. The other interesting thing that's going on now is, I don't know if you know about e-cigarettes, the latest product that's coming on the market, and I won't take time to go into e-cigarettes. If you're interested, I can spend about 3 hours telling you about them. But this is actually a commercial, and I won't play the commercial, but just showing you that I recently saw about appealing to the adult. And basically, go look it up. It's very interesting. It says, blue e-cigarettes. Oops, we're all adults here. It's time to take our freedom back. What an absolutely perfect message to give to young adults who are just wanting to be independent, wanting to be autonomous. Maybe they don't have the economic autonomy yet, but they want to be, and very much about social justice and autonomy. And here's a commercial that outright says, we're adults, take back our freedom. You know this is going to have an effect on young adult smoking, and it does. It has been shown. So other examples that are not necessarily around just tobacco, but that are very appealing. Here's one, I don't know how much you can see it. It's an alcohol one, and it says on the left, before aging and after aging. Appeals very much to a young adult who's very interested in their body. Here's another one, having Heineken attached to game day. So you've got media to media, and basically saying, you know, how cool to go ahead and use this product. Here's another one, this is for alcohol whipped cream, and it says, try our latest adult flavors. Very obvious what's going on there. And then some of you have seen this in terms of the fourth meal. It's not directly to young adults, but young adults are the ones who are most likely to be up till 12 or 1, unless you're on the West Coast and doing conferences back in DC, then you're also up. But I didn't have a fourth meal. And then, of course, we've got the image and the obesity. That's certainly, you know, a lot of times I've shown this, and I'll show younger models, but certainly somebody who's a young adult. So in terms of public policy and what do we do about this and the regulation of the marketing, well, it's a problem because you think about it, billions of dollars are spent. We spend millions. You know, which do you want, the tobacco company account or the Stop Smoking campaign? You decide on that one if you're an advertising agency. The alcohol industry, and some of this came out of some of the Institute of Medicine reports that I was part of and Richard Bonney had chaired, where there was some voluntary regulation from the alcohol industry to refrain from advertising or marketing where there are audiences that are expected to have fewer than 30% or greater than, 30% of their audiences be adolescents, but that's defined as less than 18. Despite this so-called voluntary regulation, they still are marketing, and that there's nothing restricting advertisement to those over 18. You know, for obvious reasons, it is the age of majority, but there's still no restrictions, despite the fact that young adults are highly influenced by the marketing. The 1998 Master Settlement Agreement, basically, I won't read it, but basically is saying the same idea, but it's not a voluntary, it's a regulation that the tobacco industry cannot target youth, or advertise directly to youth or in youth markets. But again, this is for under 18. The 2009 Family Control Act also talked about restricting marketing for black and white or plain packaging. They basically say you can't say light cigarettes anymore. You can't claim something's a modified risk product without actually giving evidence that it's true and getting permission to use those terms, and then have warning labels. But these have been held up in court. But here's an example where you have Marlboro Lights was the old, so now it's Marlboro Special Blend. And if anybody thinks that young adults or anybody cannot figure out that this is code, we have a lot of work to do. But again, none of this is regulating anything for anybody 18 or above. So in very, very quick, let me give you the positive side. I didn't do a lot on health promotion. There is not a lot on young adults, specifically on the health promotion, but we do know that about 42% of young adults, again, a very wide age frame, look up health information on their mobile phones. Few receive text updates, though, regarding health or medical issues. The most popular apps are exercise, diet, and weight. And then they also look up things like smoking cessation or first aid, but there's very little research specifically on young adults. So what do we do very quickly? We really need more. I mean, this is actually an area where there's a fair amount of research on young adult marketing. We know that it's occurring, but we don't have a very good breakdown of age and how it differs from 18 to the 24 or 30 or whatever age range you want to use for young adults. We also don't know enough about the racial, ethnic, the rural, by the way. Rural youth tend not to use media as much, partly because somebody said yesterday they don't have access, they don't have good connection, but we really don't know enough about different populations and the role of media. So really the question is, what are some policy recommendations other than doing more research? Focusing on the images, not just the age. How are we going to counter some of these positive images? Can we restrict the misleading ads? The 2009 Tobacco Act did that, but again, it's being held up in courts and there's not a lot of movement yet. What other regulatory efforts can we give when we're talking about legal adults in terms of age 18 or above? And then there's been some work done on counter marketing. How can we take the same research that the tobacco industry that's using to be able to promote, instead to be able to use it in our way to counter some of those ads? So that's it, and thank you very much.